On the morning of February 7, 2016, Zuar B. Huda, the director of Bangladesh Bank, took the elevator to the 10th floor. He hurried into the most restricted area of the building, his thoughts consumed by a pressing issue that had troubled his office for several days. The printer. This was no ordinary printer. It was an automated machine integrated with the bank's software, designed to print transaction reports instantly, automatically, and around the clock. The malfunctioning printer posed a significant problem, especially with its empty tray. After 2 days of troubleshooting, the printer finally resumed operation. However, a backlog of unexpected reports began to emerge, and it quickly became apparent that something was amiss. The New York Federal Reserve received instructions to drain their entire account. Panic ensued as employees scrambled to halt the transaction, but it was likely too late. Bangladesh had just lost $1 billion. It was January 2015, a calm before the impending storm. Late that night, an email quietly landed in the inboxes of unsuspecting Bangladesh Bank employees. The email appeared to be a simple zip file disguised as a job application, but it contained malicious malware designed by hackers to breach the bank's defenses. One by one, several employees unknowingly opened the zip file, unwittingly granting the hackers their initial access. Like a cancer, the malware spread throughout the network. This was no ordinary malware. It was a sophisticated piece of custom-engineered software that established encrypted channels and mapped out the bank's system infrastructure. Over the course of the following year, the hackers leveraged the sophisticated malware to create hidden backdoors within the bank's network and establish encrypted communication channels. They meticulously observed how legitimate bank employees operated, gradually uncovering the mechanics of money transfers. They discovered that the bank utilized a system known as SWIFT. SWIFT, which stands for the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication, is a secure messaging network employed by banks and financial institutions globally to transmit instructions and information for international money transfers. Nevertheless, the hackers managed to breach its defenses. However, they encountered 3 significant obstacles. First, the printer responsible for automatically printing SWIFT transactions in the Bangladesh Bank office. Second, the challenge of perfectly impersonating Bangladesh Bank's credentials on the SWIFT system to make fraudulent transfer requests appear legitimate to the U.S. Federal Reserve. And third, Bangladesh Bank itself did not maintain enough funds in its own accounts to justify the hackers' efforts. However, it did control billions of dollars stored at the U.S. Federal Reserve Bank. By exploiting SWIFT transactions, the hackers could access these vast reserves after overcoming the first 2 issues, using Bangladesh Bank as a perfect cover to acquire unimaginable wealth. But why target Bangladesh Bank specifically? The answer is simpler than one might think. At that time, Bangladesh was experiencing rapid economic growth. Despite this progress, it remained a developing nation. Its central bank lacked the robust security measures necessary to fend off sophisticated attacks, unlike those found in more established countries. The hackers recognized this discrepancy as a golden opportunity. They understood that while the bank's financial operations were expanding, its cybersecurity infrastructure had not kept pace. This made the Bangladesh Bank an ideal target, sufficiently wealthy to justify the effort, yet vulnerable enough to be exploited. While they waited, the hackers were not merely observing. They were developing even more sophisticated malware to address their printer issue. Through their access to the network, they discovered that the printer responsible for transaction logs was managed by a computer that employees constantly monitored to confirm each transaction. Rather than shutting down the computer or locking out the staff, the hackers devised a more clever strategy. They aimed to mislead the employee overseeing the printer on the day of the heist. They created malware that, when injected into the system, would cause it to cease printing transaction logs, thereby creating the illusion of a technical malfunction. This tactic would allow their fraudulent activities to go unnoticed, concealed behind a printer error. With every detail meticulously arranged, all the hackers needed was a destination for the money. They set up 5 primary accounts. 4 were discreetly opened at RCBC Bank on Jupiter Street in Manila, Philippines, each with an initial deposit of $500. In May 2015, they established a 5th account in Sri Lanka as a precaution. Additionally, they created backup accounts scattered around the globe, each poised to receive millions of dollars. The stage was set for an unprecedented heist. On the night of Thursday, February 4th, 2016, the hackers' plan was finally set in motion. As employees departed for the day, they logged onto the computers controlling Swift and initiated what they had been preparing for over a year. The brilliance of this plan lay in its timing. Typically, when executing a heist, one would choose a weekend or a period with fewer staff present to minimize detection. However, this was no ordinary heist. It appeared to be an exceptionally clever operation due to one crucial factor: time zones. The Swift terminal in Bangladesh, the U.S. Federal Reserve in New York, and the receiving banks in the Philippines operated across different time zones. In addition to this geographical advantage, the weekend in Bangladesh begins on Thursday night. As a result, once the hackers launched their heist, the bank would remain empty until Sunday morning. However, in New York, it was Friday morning around 9:36 a.m., meaning that when the hackers started issuing commands to transfer funds, New York had an entire workday ahead to process and execute those requests. Compounding their advantage, the following Monday, February 8th, coincided with the Chinese New Year, a bank holiday in the Philippines, providing an extended window for moving money without raising alarms. The hackers had from Thursday to Monday to exploit 3 distinct time zones. On Friday morning, the Federal Reserve in New York received a surge of Swift transaction requests that appeared to originate from Bangladesh Bank. The New York Federal Reserve began processing these transactions, transferring $951 million to various accounts controlled by the hackers. At this stage, the hackers had successfully infiltrated Bangladesh Bank and requested millions from the Federal Reserve to be sent to 35 different accounts. After logging out of Bangladesh Bank's Swift network, they deployed malware that began erasing evidence of their crime. Yet there was one crucial element left: the printer. This printer continuously produced physical records of all Swift transaction reports every day, including during Bangladeshi weekends. On Sunday, Zuar, the bank's director, arrived at work after the weekend and began his day by checking the printer. However, he found it empty due to the hackers' pre-installed malware. Zuar assumed it was merely a technical glitch. After all, glitches occur frequently. However, Sunday brought even greater challenges. Employees at Bangladesh Bank found themselves unable to access the Swift terminal, facing error messages when they attempted to log in. Among the few messages that were not errors were 3 from the New York Federal Reserve, questioning nearly $1 billion worth of payment requests. Zuar, now in a state of panic, tried to contact the Federal Reserve, but it was Saturday in New York, and his urgent calls went unanswered due to the weekend. In desperation, he began sending emails and faxes calling for an immediate halt to all transactions to prevent further losses. At this point, the employees were at a loss for what to do. They decided to shut down their servers and started reaching out to intermediary banks in an effort to recover the missing funds. The international banking system relies heavily on numerous intermediary banks. Funds do not move directly from the New York Federal Reserve to accounts in Asia. They pass through several intermediaries. This added to the confusion as Bangladesh bank employees made calls around the globe trying to trace their money. Then an unexpected turn of events occurred. Fate intervened, providing the bank with a stroke of luck. The automated system in New York flagged 30 transactions for manual review. By sheer coincidence, one of the terms in a swift order matched the name of an Iranian shipping vessel that had been blacklisted for evading U.S. sanctions. This coincidence would prove disastrous for the hackers, as $870 million worth of transfer requests were now subject to human scrutiny. They soon identified several red flags: the extraordinarily large total, the unusually high number of payment instructions, and the significant transfers to private entities instead of legitimate banks. Among these transactions, 5 remained, including one for $20 million destined for an account in Sri Lanka. That transfer was approved and began its journey through an intermediary bank in Germany. However, an unforeseen issue arose. A simple error halted the request for review. The transfer request misspelled Shalika Foundation as Shalika Foundation, omitting an O. This minor mistake immediately raised suspicion when a human reviewer noticed the discrepancy, causing the transaction to be rerouted back to Bangladesh Bank's New York account. Now, only 4 transactions totaling $81 million remained. A total of 35 transactions had been attempted, amounting to nearly $1 billion, but only 4 were successfully processed. The hackers managed to transfer $81 million to their 4 accounts at RCBC Bank in the Philippines. This was made possible because the transfers occurred during the Chinese New Year, when RCBC Bank was closed, preventing Bangladesh Bank from intervening. However, they needed a way to access the money. A significant portion of the $81 million was funneled to a single individual. Authorities in the Philippines later confirmed that $30 million was transferred to a Chinese national who subsequently vanished without a trace. This left $51 million unaccounted for. The hackers' next objective was to ensure that the stolen funds could not be traced back to the heist. They devised a plan to launder $51 million by sending part of it to 2 casinos, Midas Casino and Solaire Casino, with $30 million allocated for Solaire and $20 million for Midas. In 2016, casinos in the Philippines had low money laundering regulations, making them ideal targets. The exact method by which the money reached the casinos remains unclear. Typically, high rollers do not arrive with cash in hand, but rather link their bank accounts to the casinos for electronic transfers. Once the money was in the casinos, the hackers couldn't simply withdraw it and leave without arousing suspicion. To blend in, they needed to gamble for a while, so they entered the casinos and requested a private gambling room known as a junket, where high rollers could play without interruption. They informed the casino that they intended to spend $10 million there. These junket rooms typically featured baccarat, a game that usually allows players to recover about 90% of their money over time, making it an effective way to retain most of their funds after laundering. Thus, the hackers settled into these private rooms at both casinos, using the stolen money while attempting to buy time to cash out without being detected. Everyone involved, including Bangladesh Bank, the New York Federal Reserve, RCBC, and law enforcement agencies, was aware that $81 million had been stolen and was urgently trying to trace it. However, it was too late. After executing their money laundering scheme, the hackers exchanged their chips for cash, exited the casino, and fled the country. Traveling to Macau, a special administrative region of China, which made them virtually impossible to track. They successfully stole $81 million from Bangladesh Bank. But now the question remained, who were they? Despite their efforts to erase evidence from the bank's systems, experts were still able to analyze the malware and identified similarities in tools and techniques used in other cyber attacks worldwide. All evidence pointed to a North Korean group. Security researchers dubbed this hacking collective the Lazarus Group. While it is rare for a country to engage in hacking for financial gain, this approach makes sense from a geopolitical perspective. In 2013, sanctions were imposed that restricted North Korea from making bulk money transfers in response to its unauthorized missile tests. This cut off their access to international funds, and 2 years later, in 2015, they began targeting Bangladesh Bank. According to the FBI, the Lazarus Group had been systematically attacking banks in an effort to steal millions of dollars. It is estimated that they attempted to steal roughly $1.2 billion, but ultimately managed to extract only $122 million. Nevertheless, their $81 million heist from Bangladesh Bank stands as one of the largest bank robberies in history.